Hello, my name is Trevor, and today we're going to be diving back into Hyperborea 3rd Edition. We're going to take a look at the Magician and its subclasses, and I'm going to tell you why you should consider playing one in your next game. So get ready to delve into the arcane arts, today on Rolling with Advantage. Now, before we dive into the Magician and the subclasses, I do want to say that these are probably some of the harder classes to play in Hyperborea, and that just kind of goes to the old design philosophy of old OSR games, that the wizard and classes like it kind of start off weak and frail, and then they have this like large spike, and they become powerhouses at the end of the game. I can show you some tricks to kind of mitigate some of the danger early on, but this is something to kind of just go into this expecting that you're playing a class that is going to be fragile in the beginning of the game, and it's about how careful can you play it. It almost turns into an escort quest for the party. Is if they can kind of carry the wizard past the first couple of levels, the wizard can pick them up and carry them through other stuff down the road. So it's one of those things you have to kind of wait until they power up kind of thing. Now, as we dive into this, I do want to say the Hyperborea is pretty interesting because we get these 4 principal classes in the game. We get the fighter, the magician, the cleric, and the thief. Now, most people look at these and they go, oh, these are the starting classes or the beginner classes because there's all these other cool subclasses off of these. I'll just gravitate towards one of those. And I understand that because, you want to play something that's more specialized, like a Pyromancer or a Necromancer or something like that. But I do want to tell people pause, because the principal classes in this game are extremely good. They're very, very powerful. I wouldn't say they're the beginner classes like a lot of people think they are when they first look at them. In fact, in some cases, they may be some of the best classes in the game. Particularly today, we're going to talk about the Magician, I feel, is an absolute powerhouse, and I'll tell you why here in a second. So I feel that a lot of people don't make the mistake of overlooking the principal classes when you're trying to decide what you want to play in your game. So with that, let's take a look at the principal class of the Magician, and then we'll kind of go off and take a look at all of its subclasses. So first, let's dive into the Magician. So as we take a look at these classes, one thing that we're always going to be taking a look at is what can this character do, and what does it bring to the party? This is a game that it really takes, it's a team effort, and you've got to make sure that, a party has a lot of the different things that they need to kind of get through. Hyperborea is a very dangerous world. It's a dangerous game to play in. So you want to kind of make sure, you don't necessarily have to have like the perfect party, but you do want to think like, hey, who can do certain tasks that we might need. And with the Magician, let's take a look and see what he can do. And we'll do this for all of the subclasses. You'll see a lot of overlap because the Magician is actually, everything else kind of like splinters off of the Magician. So we'll start with that, and then we won't maybe like explain some of the abilities down the road because we've already kind of talked about it with the Magician. So the first thing we take a look at is, do note that this class and all of its subclasses, its hit die is a D4. That means at the beginning of the game, you're starting with 4 hit points, unless you have a higher constitution, which I highly recommend you try to get as high a constitution as possible, because having low hit points is extremely difficult. It's what makes this class hard to play in those early levels. Now, the other thing is you're talking about classes that aren't going to be wearing armor. They're very limited on their weapons, and you have to be pretty judicious on what you think you're going to be doing in combat, because you're going to be limited on how many spells you can cast. So in those rounds where you're not casting a spell, you have to think, what is my character doing? If we take a look at the Magician, his favorite weapons are like dagger, dart, quarterstaff, and sling. Well, 3 of those are considerably to be ranged options. So maybe having a caster with decent dexterity would not be a bad idea either, because there might be a lot of rounds where your best action is to sit back and use your sling or something like that. A little bit of damage or something like that is not bad. So especially early in the game, until you get some of your big spells that can kind of stay around and kind of do a lot of damage. So really kind of be thinking about that. I know a lot of people, when they think about a Magician, they think I'm going to have my quarterstaff, and that may be fine and good, but I always look at it as, if I'm playing a wizard or magician or whatever, if I ever get in a situation where I have to hit something with my stick, I feel like something has gone horribly wrong. Like, I don't want to be doing that unless it's an absolute last resort. But in the chaos of these games, a lot of times you find yourself in a corner with what you have to do. So just kind of keep in mind, like, what am I doing when I'm not casting spells? All right, so with that, let's go through the class ability. All right, Alchemy. Alchemy is a very big ability because a lot of times in this game, identifying the things that you find in dungeons and delves and things is extremely difficult in this game. Even the identify spell, which we'll talk about in a minute, is a very tedious thing just to cast. So having things on hand that I can immediately tell you what something is huge. You may find a strange concoction of something, and, is it a poison? Is it a healing potion? Well, you're going to want somebody there to tell you, hey, yes, you can drink that, or no, you better not drink that. A magician and a lot of the subclasses that go along with it can do that. So don't overlook that ability. It's very, very big. The other big thing that the magician gets, probably one of the most signature abilities, because he's the only one that gets this, is the familiar. Now, we are very used to seeing a familiar in like a 5th edition or 3rd edition, whatever D&D you played. You're used to the idea of a familiar. Now, there's something kind of unique, and it kind of goes back to an old school design with this, is that the familiar actually kind of gives you more power. It's not just there to have that Beastmaster ability to be able to see through its eyes. It can do that. But what it also allows you to do, it also gives you more hit points. One of the things that we see here is the hit point total of the familiar is added to the magician's total. So a magician may only start with 4 hit points. You may get another 3 hit points or something from your familiar. Well, that's 7. I mean, you've almost doubled your hit points because of your familiar. Now, there is a downside to that. If the familiar dies, it can straight kill the wizard and the magician as well. So we have to be sure that we protect the familiar. The familiar also allows us to have extra spells. It says the magician can memorize 1 extra spell of each available spell level per day. So a 5th level magician gains an additional 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level spell. That is absolutely huge, especially early in the game. Early in the game, if you look at your level 1 caster, you're going to be able to cast 1 spell a day. With a familiar out there, now you can cast 2. If you have a high enough intelligence, well, now you can cast 3. And you want to have all of those things firing so that you can have options in combat other than sitting back and hitting something with a stick or using a sling. Now, once you get higher up, you're going to have a lot of different spells, but the thing is that in this game, you've got to be pretty picky and judicious about when you cast certain things. That being said, the right spell at the right time can completely just change the entire course of combat, and it can be very, very clutch, and it's kind of up to you to be that person, that comes up and says, oh, I've got the perfect spell for the situation. That's kind of the role of the magician in the different subclasses. Okay, so familiar is huge. The other thing that they can do is that they can read magic. The ability to decipher otherwise unintelligible magical inscriptions or symbols placed on weapons, armor, items, doors, walls, and other media by means of the Sorcerer Armor spell or like methods. Again, not many people in the game can do this, so the magician and the subclasses, I think most of them have this. Read magic is huge. They also can use scrolls, they can write scrolls, which is another way to increase how many different spells that you can have in your book and things of that nature. All of these things we're kind of used to seeing with the casters in previous editions of D&D. And it's fun that it's all kind of here. And if you've played 2nd edition D&D, a lot of this is going to feel very familiar. So that is what we're looking at for the magician. Now, the other thing is that they do pick up new weapon skills down the road at 4th, 8th, and 12th level that you can be your favored weapon. I think it's pretty cool that you could pick up a bow down the road. I think that really is a cool thing that you could pick up off, to do in those rounds where you're not casting spells. So that's pretty cool. And then down the road, it talks about how you can get enlist henchmen, and all the characters in this game at 9th level, they get some type of lordship, or they get some type of keep or something as we kind of get toward the end of the game. Remember, this game goes up to 12th level, not 20th, like we're used to seeing in others. Now, in order to really talk about all of these things, is that all of these subclasses are going to look kind of the same as far as some of their abilities. What is very unique about this game is that each individual class and subclass has their own list of available spells that they can cast, which is extremely cool. So now let's go take a look and see what the magician brings to the table. Okay, so here's the spell list for the Magician. Now, we're not going to go over all of these. In fact, what we're looking at here is just the first 3 levels, and then we have another 3. So this is levels 1 to 6. This is as far up as this game goes. What I do want to do is kind of like showcase a couple of spells of why I think that the Magician is particularly cool. First, early on, you're going to take a look at some of the spells. One of the spells that I really like early on for these characters, for magicians, is Sorcerer Armor. What this allows you to do is you cast it on yourself, and it's like you're wearing leather armor. But the cool thing is that it stays on you until you take an amount of damage. It's like 10 plus your caster level. So until you take a good amount of damage, it stays on you. So if you cast this on Monday and you haven't taken any damage until Friday, it's still on you. That frees up the spells that you have to memorize, and it's already on you. So that's pretty cool. This game doesn't have like the concentration mechanic that we see in like 5th edition. There's a lot of things that you can kind of have like just kind of going, which is pretty cool. That you have these different type of enchantment effects kind of rolling with you. So that's pretty neat. Now, the other thing that we see that this character gets is it does get Magic Missile and Burning Hands, and we've seen that in previous editions. I do want to say that Magic Missile in this game, it is auto damage, but it's very low. And I just feel like there's some better things you can do with your spells early. The thing that's interesting about this is if you take a look, they get the ability to cast Invisibility as a 2nd level spell. They also get the ability to cast things like Summon Daemon. And actually, as a summoner, the Magician is pretty good. Because they can summon daemons, they eventually get summon monster, and they can actually summon walls. There's some of the wall spells that they get, they're the only ones that get them, and that's something that you're going to see. You're going to see certain classes in this game have the ability to cast certain spells that no one else can cast. Now, the Magician has some overlap, because he does take some things from the Pyromancer and the Cryomancer and things like that, but he also has certain spells that only he can cast. As I want to take a look at some of the wall spells that only magicians get. Particularly the 5th level spell, Wall of Iron. What this allows you to do, this has a 60-foot range. It evokes a vertical metal partition to rise from the ground, typically to seal off a passage or a wall breach. And the Wall of Iron must have appropriate anchor points, okay? But it covers 600 square feet. And it can be destroyed by Dispel Magic. It is otherwise permanent unless battered down. It is a permanent wall. That is extremely cool. They also get another version of it called Wall of Stone. These are spells that are only available to the Magician. So you've got a class that has a lot of the blasting ability that we'll see with Lightning Bolt and Fireball, things like that. But it also has the ability to, create walls, to summon monsters. It has some of the defensive abilities that we saw earlier. So I believe that between the Familiar having the increased spell capacity and some of these unique spells to the Magician, I think the Magician could be an absolute powerhouse in a party. So don't overlook the Magician because it doesn't seem as cool as like a Pyromancer or a Necromancer or something like that. I think the Magician can really be a great character to bring to the party. So the subclasses that we have to take a look at today is going to be the Cryomancer, the Illusionist, the Necromancer, the Pyromancer, and then finally the Witch. So we have 5 possible subclasses. So we've talked about the Magician, and now what we're going to see is that some of these classes are going to have a little bit of overlap with some of the Magician abilities, but each of them will bring something unique, and they'll have different things in their spell list that only they can do. Also, you're going to get a lot of different types of flavor from these characters that you may not get out of the Magician, and I'll show you. So first, let's start by taking a look at the Cryomancer. Cryomancer, like all the others, are going to have low hit points. You're looking at a D4. The Cryomancer is not going to have the Magician familiar, so his hit points won't be as high. But one thing we have to do is remember is that this character also, like other Magician subclasses, has some defensive spells to take a look at. It's also going to be, once it gets a little bit higher, probably one of the more defensive casters that we'll see in its spell list. One of the things to take a look with this as well is the favored weapons are a little bit better than the Magician. He does have the ability to have the axe, hand axe. He also can have a short spear, and then also the horseman's pick. In addition to the dagger and the dart and the quarterstaff, it doesn't have the sling though, which I think is a really good thing to have. But having a bunch of daggers on hand to throw It's about the same, I guess, damage-wise. He also has the Alchemy ability that we saw with the Magician. Now, he does have vulnerability to fire and heat, which is a great flavor thing. He gets a -2 penalty to saving throws versus anything that's fire or heat or related. But on the inverse of that, he also gets a +2 to ice and cold affinity. This is great flavor. It's really like, hey, you know, this character loves the cold, doesn't like the heat, and we'll see the same thing for the Pyromancer when we get to him. It'll be reversed. Now, he gets an ability called Icicle. Now, once per day, per level of experience, he can evoke a 12-inch icicle to rise in and be loosely clenched in his hand, and it glows violet. So it's basically like summoning like a light source. It gives you a 15-foot like violet light, and he can use it as a dagger, which is pretty cool. And it lasts for 6 turns, which in this game is an hour. Before crumbling. So he basically just out of nowhere, he can pull like a torch light kind of thing with his frozen like icicle. Really, really cool. He also gets the ability to cast Read Magic, or use the ability Read Magic, which we saw with the Magician, which is really, really good. And he does get the scroll use. He gets the scroll writing. And then he also, his sorcery and his new weapon skills, all of that line up pretty much just like we saw with the Magician as well as the Enlist, Henchman, and the Lordship. So really the big difference in the base abilities of these two classes between Magician and Cryomancer is instead of the familiar, they get the Icicle. Now, you may think that's not as good, you know, outside of getting the vulnerability to heat and the cold, than the familiar. But let's take a look at its spell list. As we take a look at the Cryomancer spells, one thing to take a note is that you're going to see a lot of very flavored spells. You're going to see spells that really kind of like pull you into feeling like you're playing this frozen ice mage kind of thing. Instead of burning hands, you have freezing hands. Instead of the Sorcerer's Armor that we saw with the Magician, you get something called Shield. Shield is a very good defensive spell. It doesn't last as long as Sorcerer's Armor, but it's a solid defensive spell to start with. And in my opinion, it's like a must pick early on. The Cryomancer, as he moves up into level 2, you're going to get some really cool things like Frost Sphere is a solid one, and then you also get Ice Armor. Ice Armor is an extremely good spell. It makes you like kind of a tanky wizard, which is very cool. They also get the ability to cast Invisibility. And also Shatter, I think, is a very good second level spell for these guys, because it kind of goes with the whole idea of like shattering ice and everything, but it's a good offensive spell. Later on, they're going to pick up Lightning Bolt. I do want to say, take a look at Ice Armor. This is a very, very good spell because what this does is it lasts 1 turn plus 1 turn per CA level, which is several rounds. Like, this is going to last a very long time by the time that you get this up and running. And what this allows you to do is it basically acts like laminated armor, which gives you an AC of 5 and DR of 1. That's straight damage resistance, which when you're talking about a character that has 4 hit points on his hit die, having 1 damage resistance is huge. Use another second level spell that's really cool here. It's called Ice Axe, where you can actually create a frozen axe to fight with. So I just like the idea that I can have like this armor and this axe. It's pretty cool. They also get things like Ice Bridge, which is something only they can get, something to summon. But Ice Storm is definitely a spell to take a look at because what this does is it allows you to basically create this massive area, 120 foot range, and you create this 30 by 30 foot area. And no saving throws are allowed. They just take 3d10 damage. That is a ton of damage. The Illusionist is interesting and it's different than the previous classes we've taken a look at because it actually requires you to have some dexterity. While I recommend having a pretty decent dexterity for most of these classes, this is one that particularly needs to have dexterity. It has a requirement of 9, but you probably want to get it higher than that for this class. Again, you're only going to get the D4. For your hit points. You're not going to use armor, but you do get the dagger, dart, quarterstaff, and sling, which was what we saw with the Magician. It does have the alchemy ability that we saw before, but what it has is colored globe. This is another thing that we get where you can actually create a light out of your hand. This is a very cool thing that some of these classes get because light in this game is a big deal. Being able to see is a big deal. There's no dark vision or anything like that. And a lot of times being in a dungeon, light has a huge play and whether or not you're going to get through an encounter is whether or not you can even see what's attacking you. So having light is a big deal. The color globe glows any color is chosen by the illusion, and it sheds a 10-foot radius. It lasts 6 turns, which is an hour, and it doesn't need concentration. So once you pull it up, it just kind of moves it around. The other thing that it gets is it gets this extraordinary. So whenever you have skill checks and things like that of, doing a backflip off a wall or something like that, the illusionist actually can have a chance of doing those things a lot better than other classes. He gets the read magic, scroll use, scroll writing, sorcery, all of those things we've seen with the other classes, subclasses for the magician. But it does have this cantrip where he can actually change himself into create an illusion to make his chins, ears, eyes, hair, lip, nose, teeth, all features can be altered, so he can make himself look like someone else. So as we take a look at the spells for an illusionist, this is going to be more about your phantasm and illusions. So things like mirror image at first level is a huge thing. Blur is an amazing defensive spell that we pick up at second level. I also want to point out that while some other classes get this as well, but Glitter Dust is a very solid, like an area of effect blind, which is very, very good. Of course, they get improved Phantasm at second level as well as Invisibility. All of these are very, very good. One of the spells that I do want to kind of like take a look at and kind of showcase. So let's take a look at Phantasmal Killer. Now, Phantasmal Killer is one of these spells that is a classic. It's either going to go big or go home spell that I love for the illusionist. All right, so this is what it does. This is a 4th level spell for you, okay? So you summon this thing and it lasts 1 round per your level, okay? And you create this phantasm and it goes and it attacks this, whatever the target is that you point at. And it has a fighting ability of 4, which is really, really high. If it hits, the victim is allowed a death saving throw. If the saving throw fails, the victim is slain. They are dead. Now, if the saving throw is successful, the target has disbelieved the phantasm and a backlash effect strikes the caster unconscious for 1d10 rounds unless a saving throw is made. I realize this is a boom or bust spell and a lot of people hate them. I love the wild card of, you know what, I'm going to throw this thing out there and if you have a bad roll, you're dead. I love this. So, I think this is a fantastic spell. This is a spell that makes me want to play an illusionist. I love this save or die thing to put it back on the DM and say, hey, this big nasty thing, save or die. I think it's very, very fun. So that to me is a reason to play the Illusionist. It's Phantasmal Killer. Alright, finally we get to the Necromancer. All you edgelords out there rejoice because the Necromancer is playable and it's really, really good. What you get here is this is a class again that this one you're going to need a little bit of wisdom and a plus to your intelligence as well. You're also going to be looking at low hit points, the D4. You do get a little different weapon. You get the dagger, the dart, quarterstaff. You can use a sickle sling. You can also use a whip, which is actually really, really good in this edition of Hyperborea. There's a lot of people pretty excited about how good the whip is, so that could be a pretty interesting weapon for your Necromancer. Now, what we do see with this is he does get the Alchemy that we see with everyone else, which is don't overlook it. It's a great ability, but I think all of the magicians have it. They also get read magic, scroll use, scroll writing, sorcery, all of those things we've seen. But what they get that's a little bit different is they get command undead. At 3rd level, they can cause undead to submit and serve. So they actually have like a turning ability that they can. So if they come across, low level to begin with undead, they can just take it over. That is really, really good. Now, I do want to say this to you DMs out there. If you have a Necromancer at your table, don't say, well, I'm never going to throw undead at them because I don't want them to use command undead. No. You still throw it out there, let them use their abilities because they're playing these characters to use these abilities. Let them use the abilities. In fact, create environments for them to use their abilities. They will love it. So as we take a look at the Necromancer spell list, you're going to see a lot of things here that's just so on brand for Necromancer. Animate Carrion at level 1. I love the fact that right out the gate, they can start animating things. That's great. Command is a great spell. They're not the only ones in the game to get it, but I do want to say they do have access to it at level 1, which is fantastic. They have invisibility to undead, detect undead, locate the dead. They've got all the tools early on. They can create a skeletal servant. All of this they can do out the gate at level 1. So I think out the gate they have a lot of really, really cool things they can do. Moving into level 2, they get some pretty interesting things. I love Forest of Bones. It's like an area of effect, like Snare. I think that's really, really cool that they get. And they also get a spell I absolutely love at second level called Scythe of the Reaper. The name of that alone makes me want to play it. It's extremely cool. And then moving up, you get things like Exploding Skull at level 3. And then, of course, you get the big animate spells there at the end, and they also can raise dead. So they get all these cool things. In fact, at the end of the game, they can summon invisible stalkers. So there's a lot of cool summoning things they can do. They can do bat swarms. They can do all the fun things. So Scythe of the Reaper is very, very cool because what it does is it summons a scythe that's surrounded by black motes of negative energy. It materializes in the air. It kind of flies around, and you kind of direct it to attack different things. It doesn't do a ton of damage. I mean, it's okay. It's a second level spell, but the thing is, this is a ranged spell that you can just keep directing it to attack things. The next thing I want to take a look at is Exploding Skull. What Exploding Skull is, now necromancers and witches get to look at this spell, but I really, really like it. What it does is on the clean skull of a human or humanoid, the sorcerer places a ward that persists for 1 turn until touched by another living creature. If the skull is touched by someone other than the caster, at the end of the spell's duration in any case, it explodes with waves of negative energy, and it does 1d6 damage per CA level of the sorcerer unless a sorcerer saving throw is made for half damage. The Exploding Skull can be hurled as a grenade to equal effect, the skull detonating upon impact. So let me tell you why I like this spell a lot. So the fact that I can pick this thing up, I can cast it on it, and then I can throw it and do this damage, I realize that it's, it's kind of cumbersome. I've got to have a skull. I've got to do all this. But man, just the thought that I can throw an exploding skull grenade at somebody, why would you not want to do this? This just sounds awesome. What better way to freak out an enemy and to throw an exploding skull at them? I can't wait to do this to my players. I think every villain needs an exploding skull to throw at them. So I love this spell. It's so on brand, and it's really, really cool. All right, next we're going to take a look at the Pyromancer. Now, this is the inverse of the Cryomancer, so we're going to see a lot of similarities between the two. It's just going to be the inverse of it. Now, one thing that we do need with this character is we have to take a look at favored weapons. They actually get Morningstar and Scimitar. They have some decent melee weapons. I feel it's a trap. I don't really want my 4 hit point wizard going up and swinging a weapon. But there are some interesting things to take a look at because he does have some defensive spells, and he does get the ability to have invisibility, which maybe is pretty cool to have like a scimitar with that. So I'm not saying never do that. I just think, me personally, my play style is I want the big beefy guys up front, and I'm going to be sitting back throwing things. Then I am going to be running up and hitting something with a scimitar. So if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. I would love to see how you play your melee wizards. I just like my characters to live. That's me. All right, so as we move down, we're going to take a look, and of course they get the alchemy. They can do the candle thing where they can actually like light fire out of their hand for the light source. We've seen some other characters have similar things like this. They have the flip of the Cryomancer. They have an affinity to fire and heat, so they get a bonus to those saving throws. They also get a negative to ice and cold. They're vulnerable to that. They get read magic, scroll use, sorcery. All of that is the same as we've seen everything else. But again, let's take a look at some of their spells and see what is, unique to the Pyromancer. Okay, so the Pyromancer has a couple of spells. Of course, they're all going to be fire related. I do want to point out they get Sorcerer Armor, which we talked about earlier. Great defensive thing to kind of give you some type of armor. It lasts for a while. They get Burning Hands. They get Flaming Missile, which is okay. I like Burning Hands because it allows you to kind of hit an area of things. It's auto damage too. I'm not a big fan of Flaming Missile. It is auto damage, but I feel like it's just low damage for the fact that I only can carry so many spells. I do want to point out that both Fire Web and Flame Blade and Flaming Sphere, all 3 of those are really, really solid spells. They also get the ability to cast Glitter Dust, which I've already talked about before. I really like that. They also get Invisibility, which I think is interesting. And they also get, of course, Fireball, Flame Arrow, Explosive Runes. I mean, these guys can blow some things up, which you would expect. The other thing that's interesting is at level 6, they can summon a fire elemental, which I think is very, very interesting. And they also can do things that no other class can do, and one of those is they can actually transform into a hellhound, which I think is really interesting. The Cryomancer has something similar to that, where they can turn into a winter wolf, but I just think the idea of turning into a hellhound is really, really cool. So let's take a look at a couple of these spells that I like, particularly the low-level spell. Let's take a look at Fireweb. Now, Fireweb is a spell that is unique to Pyromancers, and I think it is extremely good. What it does is it shoots a flaming web, it ensnares and burns one medium or smaller creature for 3d4 damage. The victim is allowed an avoidance saving throw. If the save is successful, he takes half damage and is not ensnared. He is nearly grazed, and it collapses and falls away anyway. But if he fails, the target is trapped in the burning web for the duration, which is 3 rounds, and it takes damage of 2d4 on round 2 and then 1d4 on round 3. Anything flammable, it catches on fire, but the fact that that's a lot of possible damage for a second level spell, and the fact that it can snare them is very, very good. Of course, let's go ahead and talk about Fireball since we've got it here. This is something both the Mage and the Pyromancer has. It is the classic, the iconic spell. You throw a fiery missile that explodes, a 40-foot diameter. When it strikes its target, this is one of those things, it does a d6 per CA level. So the higher you get, the more it does. At 5th level, which is whenever you get this, it does 5d6 damage. You save for half. Now, this is what's very interesting and fun and dangerous about this spell, is that the Fireball must occupy its full volume, which is 33,000 cubic feet. If cast in an enclosed area smaller than a 40-foot diameter sphere, the flames expand as necessary into halls, tunnels, closets, windows. So there is a whole lot of fire, and it's going somewhere. You absolutely can wipe your party with this, and that's half the fun, right? So Fireball, yeah, that's fun. Fine, let's talk about the Witch. Now, what's interesting about the Witch is the Witch has like a little bit of the Necromancer stuff, but it also has some of the Druid stuff in it as well. They do get the ability to use like a whip. They get the ability to use a sling, which is pretty interesting, but they also get the blowgun, which is very, very unique. They do have alchemy, but they also get the ability to brew things, which is not something we see unique to them. But do talk to your DM and make sure you're going to have enough downtime in your games to be able to use this ability. I wouldn't want to play a character that I'm not going to have the time in game to like do the crafting necessary to make the character kind of do all of its things. It does have a familiar, which is similar to what the Magician has, but it is a little different. It's actually probably the best scout in the game because it has unlimited range. Also, this character can actually cast like Detect Evil, Detect Illusion. It can do all the detect spells through the familiar, so they can actually see things at great distance, which I think is very, very interesting. Other things that we see that's very unique, they have several very unique abilities. We do see the read magic and the scroll use and all the stuff we see with other characters, but what it does, it has a dance of beguilement. They can actually, put suggestion into people using that. They get that at 5th level, and they also get the effigy ability, which is kind of the thing that we see, which is pretty interesting, where they can, create the clay, cloth, or wicker, doll, and they can do all the fun stuff with that. So there's a lot of neat things that they can do with that. But finally, at 7th level, we get they had some fun with the design of it. They get to animate the broom, and they can do this ritual. They can fly around on the broom, which is pretty interesting, and I think it's a lot of fun. And speaking of fun, let's take a look at the spells, because they have some spells that are straight great and right out of a Disney movie. So what you see with the Witch spell list is very interesting, is that you see a lot of things the Magician had, but you also see some Druidish things in there as well, like Fairy Fire. You also see Charm, which is pretty interesting. I would actually play this character as a Charmer. It also gets Sleep at 1st level, which is really, really good. And then going forward, they also get some of the necromancy stuff, like they get Ghoul Touch. They also get the ability to levitate at 2nd level. It's another spell. And then they get like Continuing Darkness. There's a lot of interesting things they get, but they also can be a really good summoner. They can summon insect swarms and toad swarms and daemons and things of that nature. But the thing that I absolutely love, and the reason I either want to have one of these at the table or maybe introduce one as a villain, is they get a spell that is so perfectly Disney. It's Sleep. Okay, Sleep Everlasting. A sorcerer touches a single victim, causing sleep. A sorcerer saving throw is allowed only if the victim is of greater hit dice than the sorcerer. The effect is permanent. Unless Dispel Magic or Remove Curse is cast, the enchanted victim's body process is slow, so that the victim will not starve, dehydrate, or age. This is the Snow White spell, and I want to make an adventure with this villain so bad because I think it's just fantastic. But there's another spell that they get to that is very, very on brand for them. The second spell that is completely on brand is Cause Lycanthropy. Now, I love this. I think the table could get out of hand if you've got a character that is permanently putting people to sleep and then call it and creating werewolves to guard them. So that's going to wrap up our Magician and Subclasses review. Now, there is a ton of information here, and I will know I'm sure I overlooked some really good spells. Please let me know what the powerhouses are, and maybe I can do some follow-up videos of individual subclasses. I just wanted to get my initial thoughts out of the 3rd edition. We've got some new spells, new abilities. Most of the classes stay pretty much the same moving from 2nd to 3rd edition, but I really want to get a video out there for you guys to say, hey, one, Hyperborea is a great game you should jump in and play, but also, consider playing a Magician or one of the subclasses. I think there's a lot of very cool design spells and abilities that I think could be a lot of fun at the table. So, with that, be sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel, join our Discord down below, and let's start chatting some Hyperborea. And until next time, let's keep rolling with advantage. Thanks.